Hi, everyone. I'm Gina Malin, Executive Director of the Parents League of New York, a nonprofit institution that's been around for over 100 years, supporting families and schools. And I'm so pleased to have Evie Gurney with us today. She is our expert school advisor specializing in middle school, high school, and boarding schools. And today we're going to chat a little bit about boarding schools. And it just so happens yesterday, the Times published an article titled Boarding School Boom. And Evie, would love to hear your thoughts on that, especially, having advised many families this year through the application process to boarding schools.
Sure. So, a couple of things I think are fueling that boom. I'd say first and foremost, it's the ability of those schools to have kids be there in person and have them be able to do the arts they want to do the sports they want to do, to socialize. They have much more control over the bubble, so they can separate dorms into pods, and that pod can stick together for classes and meals and sports. There's just a lot more flexibility, primarily because they have the space, whereas the day schools just don't have that. But also, a lot of the schools, like the day schools and colleges, went test optional, so that also fueled the boom. And finally, I think, obviously, pandemic, parents are looking around trying to think about other options because of, they want to just make sure their kids are going to be in person and learning as much as possible.
So, speaking about this year's application process, I know that students who applied to boarding school were notified March 10th, typically, and they have until April 10th to make their decision. So what happens if a family or a student decides now that they want to go to boarding school in September and miss this first round of admissions, or say, in the summer, they decide, because there is so much uncertainty still, that they decide they want to take a look at boarding school. What's the timeline, say, for this fall? Is it too late to consider entering and applying for this coming September?
Absolutely not. As you pointed out, Gina, there's so much uncertainty and change happening. So, and also, as you pointed out, this year's process is not done. So their contracts are due April 10th. So they don't even know what their incoming classes are going to be at this point. So if you were considering doing an application to a boarding school, there are a couple of things you could do. Well, first, I think I would wait until after April 10th to contact them. Just because they don't really know what their class is going to be yet. And secondly, keep in contact with them. I think you could probably visit schools in the summer. I will say that does not replace visiting a school when it's in person, and let's hope they're back in person in the fall. But this may be a time when you can visit schools, physically visit schools over the summer when they're not in session, and at least you'll have set foot on the campuses, which are pretty impressive and very, very worthwhile. And if you have access to a car and you can go to a couple of schools over the summer, again, it does not replace seeing a school in person, but it can give you a flavor of a school. Secondarily, or thirdly, you can be in touch with the Parents League, because we will get openings throughout the spring, and I'm pretty sure we'll get openings throughout the summer. So, we contact boarding schools, they get back to us and let us know if they have spaces, and then you can take it from there. And to get yourselves prepared for an application, so say you're thinking about the fall, this is sort of also applies to the following year. But if you're thinking about the fall, you probably wouldn't have to do a full application because it is late in the process, but you definitely would need a teacher recommendation, an official transcript, possibly test scores, but again, that's been waived by a lot of schools this year. But definitely those two things: teacher recommendation, transcript, and then absolutely an interview. So.
Okay, so if you're just joining us now, I'm here with Evie Gurney, our expert school advisor from the Parents League of New York, and we're talking about applying to boarding schools. And just to reiterate what Evie just mentioned, it's not too late to file an application if you miss the first round. It's important that you call the school to see if they still are taking applications, if they have openings. And you can also contact the Parents League. We have nearly 150 boarding schools who are members, which we are in touch with about openings, and we'll be contacting them shortly after April 10th, after this first round of admissions has been completed, to see if they are still entertaining applications for the fall. So now, speaking of the fall, and that's typically when families would apply for 2022 enrollment, the fall of 2021. So can you give us a quick overview of the timeline for 2022 application?
Sure. So I would say it's similar to the day schools. It's really after Labor Day when the process begins. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that with a boarding school, it is very important to visit. I mean, really with any school, but especially with a boarding school, very important to visit while the school is in session. They kind of don't take your application seriously unless you visit when it's in session. However, we really don't know at this point what the application process is going to look like in September, but you will definitely, it'll have the basic components of teacher recommendations, official transcripts, probably testing, and the student interview. And if there's a tour, it may be virtual. If it's in person, then it's a little bit more of a time commitment, but that's really what it's going to look like. And the application deadlines are a little bit later than the day schools. So many families do both day and boarding. And you will get your results. There's a little bit of an overlap when you have your day results and your boarding results. So you will be able to make a choice.
Great. Well, thank you, Evie, for joining us today. And if you are interested in boarding schools, I encourage you to call us and speak to Evie or another one of our advisors about boarding schools. We love to help. We love to talk about schools and guide you through this process. Thanks again. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.